3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
There is no other institution that has the ability, uniquely,
without a heritage, every generation starts over.
Ask not
to remind the current regime
what your country...
We, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do.
to get back in their box and stay there.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
From the Heritage Foundation, this is Heritage Explains.
English majors might recognize the following piece of poetry. It's a song sung by the genie-like spirit Ariel in William Shakespeare's The Tempest. Ariel is addressing the song to Ferdinand, a shipwrecked prince whose father has apparently been lost to the sea. Full fathom 5 thy father lies. Of his bones are coral made. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. Sea nymphs hourly ring his knell. Ding dong, hark, now I hear them. Ding dong bell. This poem contains the first known usage of the phrase a sea change, meaning a foundational change in perspective that brings with it broad consequences, a paradigm shift. Our nation has known many such changes as the decades ebb and flow. With a new conservative administration, we are currently experiencing one such sea change, especially on one of President Trump's biggest campaign priorities, the U.S. southern border with Mexico. Over just the last week, the number of daily border crossings has crashed compared to the Biden administration. Border enforcement in the interior has been seriously undertaken. The U.S. military has been deployed to assist Customs and Border Protection. When I asked Lora Ries, Heritage's director of the Border Security and Immigration Center, what she thought, she had one word:
refreshing.
In our conversation, she explained why. Lora Ries, welcome back to Heritage Explains.
Thanks for having me.
We've had you on the show many times to talk about border policy. Here in the first weeks and days of the second Trump administration, that conversation has changed. So we're here to talk about those changes. President Trump has very much a different approach to the border than President Biden did. One of the first things he did when he got into office was to sign executive orders to direct the federal government to conduct themselves in certain ways around the border and immigration enforcement. As you were watching those executive orders be signed, what was going through your head, and what were some of the most important executive orders to your thinking?
Yeah, so President Trump signed over 9 executive orders related to border and immigration right out of the gate. And I put them in 3 buckets. Some are redos that policies he used during his first term. So getting back to using Remain in Mexico, continuing construction of the wall system, using DNA at the border to determine if claimed families are really related or if child smuggling is going on, getting back to high standards for vetting and foreign country cooperation, and if not, imposing travel restrictions. Bucket number 2 are new changes, either in response to what the Biden administration did. So, for example, the Biden administration used mass parole, violating the immigration statutes, and gave aliens a CBP Mobile 1 application to basically schedule their illegal immigration. President Trump shut down the mobile app immediately. But going even farther, so birthright citizenship, ending that universal birthright citizenship is getting a lot of attention. And this is something that we've been calling for at Heritage for several years, because it makes no sense that someone who just illegally entered our country, having a child, giving that child U.S. citizenship. So what his executive order says is your parents have to be either a lawful permanent resident or a U.S. citizen for a child born here to be given citizenship. Groups are already suing against that order, and we expect that will go to the Supreme Court. But but President Trump can be successful on that. And then finally, what's still missing? He's starting to go after the funding for the NGOs or non-governmental organizations. These were the lifeblood of the Biden administration, the Obama administration, to carry out their policies. And these groups, including faith-based organizations like Catholic Charities, received billions of dollars in grant money. And he has halted that funding, which is critical.
Another element of enforcement is actually enforcement here in the interior. Tom Homan, who is a previous guest on Heritage Explains, is currently acting as the president's border enforcement czar, directing ICE. What have we seen develop on that front?
Well, he's doing what he said he would do, and that is doing targeted enforcement actions, going after the worst of the worst, gang members, murderers, rapists, aggravated felons in various cities throughout the country, and making our streets safer, making our communities safer.
So there have been a number of effects of these policies so far. One of them is the decrease in overall border encounters. Can you talk about maybe what might be driving that, as well as other effects that we've seen thus far?
Yeah, a couple things driving it. One, before the Trump administration began, they telegraphed that they were going to crack down, secure the border, and carry out interior enforcement. And word of that spreads south and across the globe. And if people think that they cannot get into the U.S. and disappear into the interior, then they're not going to come. They're not going to spend their life savings. They're not going to put their lives in the hands of smugglers and risk it. And so we have seen Customs and Border Protection encounters drop immediately, where they were seeing 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 a day and higher under the Biden administration. Now it's dropped to low hundreds. And the military is helping out. They are showing up in force down there to continue building the wall system, to man the border, and other support for CBP, which past presidents have used the military on both sides of the aisle, but I think President Trump is willing to use them even more so to carry out securing the border and going after the cartels.
A big part of border enforcement also has to do with our relationships with other nations. How have those been affected by the Trump administration's approach to border enforcement so far?
Well, interior enforcement means sending people home on planes. And prior to doing that, we need to get travel documents from those foreign countries where we're sending these aliens back home to. And so we've gotten some cooperation. So El Salvador President Bukele, for example, very cooperative. But we've seen kind of a mixed bag from Mexico and the new president there, President Sheinbaum. She's kind of playing both sides. So it's going to continue to require President Trump being aggressive and using U.S. leverage with respect to Mexico. And then, of course, we saw in Colombia a 180 in pretty rapid fashion, where originally the Colombian president was going to refuse planes arriving there with Colombian nationals. And then when President Trump threatened tariffs, visa sanctions, and more, the president of Colombia quickly turned around and said, not only will we take our nationals back, I'll send my own plane up to retrieve them. Wow.
Definitely a 180. So you've been working on this kind of stuff for a long time. What has the last week or so been like for you?
Refreshing, in a word. I keep tweeting that. So, for example, full support from the new Secretary of Defense, saying we're going to do everything we need to secure the border and secure America. I don't know that I've seen that in decades. The State Department Secretary Rubio fully using the tools that we have, like visa sanctions, to use America's leverage to get other countries to take their own nationals back. So it is refreshing to see.
Lora Ries, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Lora Ries for her contribution to this episode. You can find more analysis by Lora at heritage.org, or you can follow her on X at Lora_Ries. And thank you to you for listening to Heritage Explains. As always, you can reach out to us with thoughts, questions, or suggestions at heritageexplains@heritage.org. Usually this is the part where I'd say, take care, see you next week. But in keeping with the Shakespearean theme, I'll say instead, good night, parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow.
Heritage Explains is written and produced by Mark Gagne, Lauren Evans, and John Pop.